Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for Build Your Stash and Craft. This is a supplement video for week 75, and what I wanted to do was show you how the blue embossing powder turned out and show you how it works. Now this has actually dried for about 3 weeks because we had some things come up, and luckily I was some videos ahead so that I could continue getting my videos up on Tuesday. But so we're going to see how this works, and we've got our nice crumbles. It did dry, and so we're going to see. I am going to pound this one. I also have the white one that we did on week 75, and that one dried really nicely too. So I'm going to finish both of these off and show you how they emboss. Excuse me. But I am going to do the blue one. And I do apologize for the shaking, but I kind of just wanted to show you, since you saw this process right from the start, I wanted to show you how it turns out in real time. Now this did take like a whole day for it to dry up into its crumbly form. And that's the longest part of this process, is just waiting for it to dry once you put it together. It doesn't take long to put it together, it just takes a while for it to dry. But if you do a few batches at a time, set them out on different paper towels and everything, and then let them dry, then you can go ahead and finish them all off, and it's really not that bad. Let's try and get this all in here. I'm having a real problem with that. There we go. That's good enough. Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead. You just rub it against your strainer. And again, you want to make sure that you get a nice fine mesh on here. And this will give us, once we get this all the way rubbed through, I'm going to put my hand over top so it doesn't just pop out. And then I'm just going to rub. So you can just kind of see real time how long it takes to do this. And then I'm going to emboss them, and I'm going to try and do a better job. In the last video, the embossing was not that great. It's not really the embossing powder's fault. I am just not a good embosser. And it's not something, I think that maybe you need to take a little more time. Make sure that you get your sticky all over your paper before you put the embossing powder on it. See, now we're getting down to just a little bit of the thicker grit, and we've got our medium powder down inside there. But this is not taking too long at all. The longest process is putting it through the dryer sheet, because that's getting it down. This gives you a medium powder. Putting it through the dryer sheet gives you a really fine powder. And so we're about done with this. And there we go. Now some of the blue powder got on my hands, but it doesn't look like it'll be stained. And now I'm just going to take a dryer sheet and put that in my sieve. I'm going to hold this over top of a coffee filter while I dump it. And I'm going to take this little bit here and put it in there, because the little bits do kind of count, because you really don't need a lot of embossing powder when you're embossing. It goes a long way. And then again, I'm going to rub this exactly the same way. Now you might want to wear gloves so that you're not getting these chemicals on your skin. And the mesh in the dryer sheet actually makes this powder even finer. And you wouldn't think there's a difference, but there really is a difference. There's a difference between the medium and the fine. So if you want a real fine powder, you do need to do this step. I like the medium powder. I think in mixed media, it's a little lumpier. And in the mixed media, I think that looks a little better. But if you're going to do cards and that type of thing, and you want some real fine detail, then you're going to want to make sure that you do this step so that you get the nice fine embossing powder. And I'm just kind of moving it to different places of my dryer sheet. That keeps it even finer, because if you do it in the same place over and over and over, your mesh is going to get a little bit wider in your dryer sheet. And then your little granules will not be quite as fine. And you can fast forward through this part. I just kind of wanted to give you a real time how long it actually takes to do these steps. And we're getting really close to being done here. And then I'm going to turn the camera off, do the white one, and then we'll emboss them. So there we go. I've got that all done. See? And there is our embossing powder. I'm going to go ahead and put it in this little back in here. And it is a little bit messy. It kind of gets all over, so make sure you've got your surface covered. I'm going to wipe this out with a dryer sheet or with a paper towel because I don't like to get that in my sink. And so this is what our powder looks like. A nice fine powder. So I am going to go and do the white, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I have finished the blue and the white embossing powder that we did in the video 75. One thing that I wanted to show you before I forget is that when your powders sit, they get kind of solid. Now, I've already stirred these up, but you can already see that this is getting, a little bit solid, but if I just tap on it, it's going to turn right back to powder. But they actually get kind of solid where you tap on them and they kind of stay there. If that happens, all you need to do is just open it up and just stir it with a skewer or something. If you find there's some pieces in there, you just, you can just press on them and they'll just break right back up again. Or you can throw them back through your sieve real quick and they'll just turn right back to powder. But I wanted to show you, I noticed like after the second day after I did these, that they were getting solid like that. So I just shook them all around and they all turned back to powder. But what I did was I took one of them, this one here, and I put one of these little pill packs in it. They call pillow pack, it says. And what this does is this like keeps moisture out. And I got these out of a bottle of aspirin. They come, even my Michaels boxes that I get, the Michaels shoe boxes have one of these in each one. So keep these and set them aside because you never know when you're going to want to keep something, dry. And these work really well for that. But I just stuffed one of those in here. And this one is still very powdery and did not get solid at all. So that just helps keep that moisture out of there and helps them stay powdery. But if they do go to where you think they're solid, just stir them up. And then if you have to, put them back through your sieve. So that's that. When I did my blue embossing powder on camera with you, I noticed when I poured it into the jar that it was kind of two different colors. And so then I tried embossing. I wanted to see if it would emboss something very, very fine. And I embossed this here. It says just a note. But I noticed in spots it's very, very thick, and in spots it's very thin. And that's because I had two different thicknesses of embossing powder in that one jar. And so what I did was I put it back through the sieve with the dryer sheet, and I did it about half of it, so I have this very fine powder, and then I have the other half I just put here, so I have a fine and a medium. And again, that was because I didn't move my dryer sheet enough, and so I really wore that dryer sheet down, so some of the bigger granules were getting through the dryer sheet. So remember to move your dryer sheet as you're making your fine powder, or it won't be as fine. And also then, the closer that your granules are together, the better your image will be. But now I wanted to show you, I did this one. Someone asked what the white looked like on a dark color. So here is the white medium and the white fine on black cardstock, and it does turn clear. And so I thought that we would like stamp on something with some color that we can see through, because this is the blue, which also turns clear. And so I wanted to see what the blue looked like, not on black because you can't see the blue, but on color. So we'll try that too, but first we'll put it on here. I do have to say that in video 75 or week 75, the images did not turn out that great. And that's not the problem of the embossing powder. That's actually just the fact that I am not good at embossing. Now, when I just put that stamp on here, there was a whole bunch of glycerin right up here at the top. There wasn't hardly any at the bottom, just a little bit. And if you don't have whatever you're sticking it to kind of even, well, then it's not going to stick evenly. It's going to stick more where you have more, and it's going to stick less where you have less. And the problem with that then is that that's how it's going to emboss. It's going to be heavier in some spots than in others. And I am hardly even quick enough at painting this on, so it just keeps drying in spots. It's kind of soaking into my paper. And for embossing, I'm showing you here how to make the embossing powder, but to learn how to emboss well, you know, there are tons of videos out there on embossing, you know, how to emboss, how to get a good image and everything, because embossing has never been one of my strong suits. And so I hate for you to think that this just really doesn't work, because it works pretty well. I'm really happy with how it works. It's just that I have a hard time showing you how well it works because I don't emboss well. So I'm just going to try and get as even coverage as I can. And again, that's going to be up to my glycerin. So there we go. Now, this isn't too bad. You can kind of see that around the edges, there's more glycerin in the middle than around the edges. And so therefore the edges are going to be lighter than the middle. But because there's not as much embossing powder on the edges as there is stuck in the middle. But at least it's better than some of the images that I did in the other video. I was just showing you that the embossing powder really did work. I was just warming up my heat gun, and I've seen places they always say start from the bottom and, you know, kind of like get it warmed up, get it a little bit melted into the paper, and that way when you put it on the top it doesn't blow your embossing powder off your paper. And especially if you have a heat gun that I'll try and do this so you can kind of see it as it melts. If you have a heat gun that blows really hard, you definitely don't want to blow it right on the top first, because it will blow a lot of that off that's not stuck to the ink pad part really well. So it's really starting to melt now. I don't know if you can see the shine on that. And it just takes a little while. You just have to have a little bit of patience and let it melt on there nicely. Now there may be some spots where my embossing powder is a little darker than others because I dyed it with the alcohol inks, and they may not, each little granule may not be as evenly dyed. But in the longer with this, I notice the longer you melt it, the more the larger ones kind of blend in with the smaller ones. I'm going to go back underneath for just a second, and we'll call that good. So that's what it looks like, and that looks really well, and it's still quite warm, but that's a nice solid piece of plastic on there. That's stuck right on there. So it embosses really well, and it looks pretty. And if you learn how to emboss better, we'll try and do this. It says just a note on it. We'll try and do this. And again, this is something that I think that embossing words or really fine detail, that is really a talent. And it is a talent that I do not have. But if you make the embossing powders, you know, look up some of the different crafters that show you how to use them. I'm just going to use this to press it down because I got a bunch of glycerin in the middle of the stamp. And I'm hoping if I use this, I won't push those metal parts down. Okay, now there's not glycerin everywhere, so we're not going to get a real good image, but we'll see how it turns out. And that's the biggest thing. I do know that you do have to get, you have got to get your glycerin right where you want everything to stick. And I'm just going to take off the extra bits. I've watched them do that before. They just use a brush to do that. And they also have little embossing buddies and stuff that you can make that will make it so your paper's not so sticky. But we'll go ahead and try it this way. It didn't turn out too bad. It's a little thick in spots. Looks like the O on note. It looks like the glycerin like stuck inside the O and made that a solid O. But I'm actually kind of surprised at how well it did work. And then you just want to make sure that you hold your heat on there. Don't hold it in one spot too long. Move it around slowly. Let's see, that's probably, it's pretty thin, so I'm going to say that's probably good enough. And it's just barely raised. And then in a few spots it's got a little extra, so it's really raised. But that worked too. So it you know, if you practice, I've done this now a couple of times, so each time it got a little bit better. So I think that if you practice, you'll be able to do well. Now let's try the blue like on a color. And I don't want to keep you here for too long, so I'm going to do this kind of quick. I'll try and make the heart better. I'm going to, oh, I just smeared it all over the place. So I'm not so sure how well this is going to turn out, but we'll see. And this is on top of the wax colors, and the glycerin is beating up because the wax colors are wax. So we are not going to get a nice even coat with this, but we're going to see what we get with it. And again, for mixed media, you don't have to have the perfection. A lot of times the messiness looks better with your mixed media, depending on what you're doing. I'm going to brush a little bit of these edges off because there's a lot of extra on the edges. And there's a lot, I think there's a lot of extra because I actually slid that glycerin over there. But we'll see how clear, you know, how much of the color that's underneath. We'll see how much of that we see when we emboss this. Let's start again from the bottom. I got that pretty well turned into a heart. Got a little extra over on my left. And really, I shouldn't be doing this over top of the other embossing powder. I should have moved those out of the way. We'll just see how this works. And it's turned out pretty good. There's less color underneath than I thought I would see. So it's semi-transparent. So there we go. That's what it looks like. I'm just running it on the bottom a little bit for a second. And actually, I think if I ran that just a little bit more, I think it would get a little bit smoother. But, and again, here's where the, whatever you call that, the glycerin was like separating and leaving holes. And I didn't get as much on the outside as I did on the inside, but it still works really well. A nice piece of plastic. You can see some of the pink. It's hard to show it. You can see, so you can see the orange and the pink underneath, but just barely. That's very cool. And I do just want to do the clear on black really quick because I can't remember the name of who asked me, but I said that I would go ahead and show that. So I want to show it. And I'll just try and do it really quick. So yes, these do work. They work really well, and they'd be great for mixed media, even just to, you know, you don't have to have any kind of a, doesn't have to be a perfect pattern or anything. You know, in your mixed media, you just might want some texture somewhere, and you can put this on there and get a really nice texture, especially, you know, if you leave some of it, instead of being fine, you leave it kind of a medium grit. You can make it as fine as you want it. And a lot of people ask me about using grinders. Now, I don't think grinders will give you, you know, whether it's a coffee grinder or salt and pepper grinder, I don't think that that will give you, I'm going to use the fine. I don't think that'll give you as fine of a grit as the dryer sheets do. So because even going through the fineness of this sieve, you know, the grit is still bigger. It's hard to see the difference, but this one is more like a salt and this one is more like a baby powder. So this is just through the sieve, and this is through the sieve and then through the dryer sheets, actually twice, because I didn't separate it well the first time. So grinders will give you a different grind. They'll give you a different texture, and that might be really neat. I mean, that might be perfect for what you're working on. So go ahead and try whatever it is you think that you would like. And the only thing is, make sure that you don't use anything from your kitchen. If you're going to use a salt grinder or a coffee grinder, make sure that that is just dedicated to your art room. Just trying to get the extra off of there. And so this is the white on black. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you think about it, with YouTube's changes and everything, if you have a place to share it, Facebook or anything like that, and you like a video, I'd really appreciate it if you share it, because that gets more views when you share them, and that gets me more views usually. So yeah, if you have a place to share it, I would really appreciate that. And like the video if you liked it. I'm just going to put this right on top so that I can get it better. When I'm doing it from the side, it doesn't quite get as hot, and I don't think you can see it that well anyway. So but we're just going to melt this right down. Now with this one, I can see that some of the little beads are still a little bit milky because they're heavier than some of the others. So I'm just going to continue heating it like I did on the other one, and they go clear once they get completely melted. But if you like it a little bit milky in spots and clear in spots, you can leave it that way also. And maybe I'm getting a little too close too. There we go. I think it takes a little bit longer than regular embossing powders that you buy at the store. I think it takes a little bit longer to melt. Like I said, I'm not really positive because I really don't use those often. But there we go. That looks really good. And so that is how the white looks on dark colors, on dark cardstock. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you all for watching the other video too. I did want to just let you know how those turned out, let you know that that blue did turn out okay, even though it took a little bit longer for it to dry all up. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.